Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review this little video that I personally found very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video, excuse me, by the boxing channel that I tend to review here and there, along with Dante's Boxing Nation and Boxing Ego, and maybe a couple of the other ones that I tend to review here and there, like Blue Blood Sports TV, Champside, and those are the boxing channels that I mainly review. I also tend to review ESPN First Take or ESPN in general, or Skip and Shannon Undisputed, maybe overall. What the hell was that one overall with Marcellus Wiley and Jason Whitlock? I can't remember. Now, of course, it's with Emmanuel Acho, former NFL player, and Marcellus Wiley. Speak for yourself, I believe it is. But anyways, I review a certain amount of segments on this channel. The majority of the times, trying to put things in a proper context, or at least put my breakdowns and my opinions into certain things. And, like I always say on this channel, it's very important to be logical and objective. And the reason why that is because, kind of like AKHi TV here, in my opinion, and the reason why I review a lot of his videos is because I think a lot of the times, just like Boxing Ego or Dante's Boxing Nation, they can let their emotions get in the way. And that's not me saying on the note that every single thing that they say is untrue, or that, there's always a great narrative behind it. But a lot of the times, their things are narrative based. Now, some people, of course, may say, well, you've even said in the past that you don't think that they truly believe everything that they say, So is it possible that they're just doing it for views, and that they're just doing it for subscribers and all this sort of stuff? Well, that's very possible. But I believe that to a degree, that AKHi TV and Dante's Boxing Nation, I think that they actually believe a lot of the stuff is what they say, or believe what they say. And that's why it's very important to try to be as logical and objective as possible, and to try to put things, excuse me, in the proper context and in the proper perspective. Because if you're so emotionally hinged all the time, especially when you're trying to break things down, you're eventually not going to really know overall what is the truth and what isn't the truth. Because AKHi TV, even though he says things that very clearly are very, very highly illogical, at least overall certain things that when we talk about in terms of breaking down boxing overall, he clearly believes, in my opinion, some of the stuff that he actually says. There's some stuff that I believe that he does not actually believe. But he does believe, I think, a lot of the stuff that he ends up saying. But anyways, I wanted to talk about the fight that ended up happening yesterday between Efe Ajagba, of course, overall the Nigerian heavyweight prospect, who, of course, is still one of the higher-toted prospects of the division. I don't think that he's ever going to become a champion in the division, but we'll see overall what happens. But, of course, he did end up getting a very close decision and a very narrow and razor-thin decision over the up-and-coming American guy, Stephen Shaw, I believe, or Stephen Shaw, however you pronounce his name, Big Shot Shaw, which I really have no idea how he ended up getting that nickname in the first place, because all I seen from Mr. Shaw yesterday was a fighter overall that either A, did not have the boxing IQ, or was afraid overall to throw back at times with Efe Ajagba. I'm not going to say that he was necessarily afraid, because he threw back at certain times, but what I am going to say is this: he very clearly, all in all, did not understand how to win this fight. It just is what it is. And, to be honest with you, I thought that Shaw very clearly could have won the fight. I thought that he was the slightly sharper fighter. But because, excuse me, because he so rarely threw a little bit later on, especially in the second half of the fight, he really ended up costing himself this fight. And he really has no one else to blame but himself in this fight. It just is what it is. And I was watching the fight as of recent overall to see if it truly was a robbery, like what some people were saying, which is what AKHi TV said. And the fact is that no, this is not a robbery. And a lot of people really don't know what a true robbery is. If you want to take a look at a true robbery, go ahead and take a look at Araceli Lara versus Paul Williams. That's an example of a true robbery. If you want to see a true robbery, watch Manny Pacquiao versus Timothy Bradley 1. That's a true robbery. All right, there's many people overall, either A, because they don't like the fighter, or because they have an emotional narrative afoot, and they like to try to say that certain fights are robberies. Like, I watched Dante's Boxing Nation not too long ago, at least with one of the videos that I reviewed, and he basically, in a way to try and degrade Manny Pacquiao's resume, he said, well, we really can't even count Manny Pacquiao's wins over Juan Manuel Marquez because they were all controversial. Were they really that controversial, or was it just razor thin to the point to where it really could have gone either way? You can't necessarily overall degrade fights like that or just count them off just because you don't want to count them. Because if we're going to play by that game, then Andre Ward all of a sudden doesn't have a win over Sergey Kovalev, at least in the first fight. All of a sudden, Floyd Mayweather Jr., we can't count his wins over Jose Luis Castillo. So does that mean, now, some people, of course, they have a different opinion about that, of Floyd dominating Jose Luis Castillo or clearly winning. Listen, that's up to you, but the last time I watched it, which of course was several years ago, so I could have a very different opinion on it now. Point being is this: there's been a lot of close fights in the history of boxing. Just because a fight overall could have potentially went either way, in my opinion, doesn't truly mean that it was a robbery. And a lot of these channels, especially with certain fighters that they don't like, with Teofimo Lopez versus Sandor Martin, they called that fight a robbery. It was not a robbery. They called the Lomachenko versus Jermaine Ortiz fight a robbery. It was not a robbery. Okay, but then at the same time, when it came to certain fighters that, like a Jermell Charlo, who probably clearly should have lost the Brian Castano fight, because I think if you're a person that really is logical enough that you know that Jermell Charlo very clearly should have lost that fight. Now the second fight, and Jermell Charlo clearly was winning. But the first fight, even though I could see why it was scored a draw, I thought that it was a bit of a dodgy decision. I'm not really going to call it a flat-out robbery, but I thought that Brian Castano won the fight. But all of a sudden, these channels, when it comes to fighters like those, all of a sudden they're okay with the decision. All of a sudden they're okay with Deontay Wilder getting the draw over Tyson Fury in the first fight. So once again, it's always very important overall to be a decent judger or someone overall that's very decently objective overall and to not pander things according to your emotions, especially if you have a racial narrative afoot, kind of like these guys, but it is what it is. Anyways, let's see what AKHi TV had to say. Let's get into it.
The best way to describe boxing as a sport is the Wild Wild West. So tonight they robbed the next American heavyweight champion, Shaw, where he completely...
Well, first things first, no, they didn't rob Shaw. If anyone robbed Shaw, Shaw robbed himself because he barely threw any goddamn thing in the second half of the fight. I mean, really, it was an embarrassing performance. It just is what it is. Now, the fight was very close. It could have potentially went either way, in my opinion. Who would have I personally given the fight to? I probably would have given it to F.A. Ajagba just because he was a busier fighter and clearly on the front foot and pressuring him, and it looked like the pace was more his style. Now, I thought that Shaw was doing somewhat decent in the first half of the fight, but even then, he very clearly could have returned fire a little bit better. And even Andre Ward and Timothy Bradley, and of course not everyone, including myself, agrees with everything that they always have to say in terms of breakdowns of their fights. But I thought that they were right on the money. Shaw did not do anywhere near enough, in my opinion, overall in some of those rounds to at least clearly and concisely get the fight. So it is what it is.
Dominated Ajagba. However, some way, somehow...
No, he didn't dominate Ajagba at all. Now, there were certain times to where, once again, I thought that Shaw looked like the sharper fighter. But once again, I really don't know how AKHi TV comes to the conclusion of F.A. Ajagba dominating the fight. But once again, AKHi TV and these channels, once again, they're so they're so motivated, basically on trying to promote the Black American fighters up to the top by any means necessary. And don't get me wrong, Black American fighters are 99% of the time the most dominant boxers in the sport. So I mean, there's really no need overall to really go illogical and over emotional with it, because there's plenty of extraordinarily talented Black fighters and Black American fighters, especially in the sport, from Terrence Bud Crawford to Gervonta Tank Davis to Errol Spence Jr., even Deontay Wilder. Yes, of course, he lost to Tyson Fury fights, but still very decently talented. Jared Anderson, who of course is the new up-and-coming American heavyweight, very decently talented. Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, and I'm sure there's some other ones that I'm missing. Stephon Fulton, Rashidi Ellis was another one that was on the come-up, but he recently got exposed in his most recent fight. A decision that I also thought was a little bit dodgy, but, a fight that could have potentially went either way. And when you get knocked down twice in the last round, you can't blame the judges for scoring it the way that they did.
Ajagba got the decision, stopping the next American heavyweight champion from emerging through a robbery. I mean,
well, if Stephon Shaw is allegedly going to be the next American champion, then that's not really a great statement overall about America. Stephon Shaw is never going to become a heavyweight champion, in my opinion. He's not a top 10 guy, in my opinion. F.A. Ajagba is not even a top 10 guy. If you can't get past this guy, in my opinion, you're not going to really make it that far in the heavyweight division. And that's not me trying to squander anybody's dreams or me trying to be an asshole or anything like that. But listen, I just call things how I see them. If you were not able to, I mean, it's really not even the fact that Ajagba at certain rounds was able to outbox him, at least in certain rounds. Shaw really lost himself this fight. And it really overall was because he had a very piss poor performance in the second half of this fight. I mean, he really barely fought back at all.
Shaw gave Ajagba a boxing lesson. Word.
No, he didn't give Ajagba a boxing lesson at all. But listen to what AKHi TV says here. I'm gonna rewind it.
But got the decision, stopping the next American heavyweight champion from emerging through a robbery. I mean, Shaw gave Ajagba.
I need to know who Shaw allegedly is going to beat. Is he going to beat Tyson Fury? Is he going to beat Joe Joyce? Is he going to beat Anthony Joshua? Is he going to beat Deontay Wilder? I don't even know if he would beat Joseph Parker, Dillian White, Andrew Ruiz. I don't think he'd beat any of those fighters. I don't think he'd beat any of them. I don't even think that he would beat Joseph Parker at this point in time. And Joseph Parker, I've always said this, I've never really been impressed with him. I always thought that he was massively overrated. And my conclusions were proven correct in the who the hell did he fight last time? Joe Joyce fight. But you know.
A boxing lesson. Worse than the Flash. The Cuban.
Now, for those of you that ended up watching that fight, that was on the undercard, I believe, of the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder trilogy. How the hell can you actually come to the logical conclusion? But of course, I'm talking about AKHi here. I don't think that he has any logical conclusions. How can you actually come to the conclusion, I guess I should say, that he actually overall dominated, what the hell is his name, Ajagba more than what the Flash did, or Frank Sanchez? Frank Sanchez dominated Ajagba to the point to where he really didn't even win a single round in the fight. He also dropped him, I believe, once or twice in the fight. The performances are really not even similar. I mean, it's it's really overall insane with the comparison. Now, there could be a multitude of reasons for this. He maybe does not like Frank Sanchez as much. Yes, he's a black fighter, but he's also in Canelo Alvarez's corner when it came down to he's part of those guys. Could it be maybe that he doesn't like him for that? Who knows? Maybe. Could it also be that, Shaw was an up-and-coming black American fighter and AKHi TV, his vision is a bit clouded because of that? More than likely that, but who knows? Either way, I don't know if you have any boxing sense, which AKHi TV clearly doesn't. It just is what it is. It's no offense against him, but I think a lot of the times he comes to an illogical conclusion. It just is what it is, and that's because he lets his emotions go on the forefront. Because if you really know anything about boxing, if you're experienced enough, and if you know anything, if you know how to score in a fight, this definitely was not a robbery. Not even close.
Flash gave Ajagba. Therefore, if you believe Shaw lost tonight, then you must also believe Frank Sanchez lost to Ajagba as well. Because Shaw.
Now listen to what AKHi TV just said there. That makes no fucking sense. That makes no fucking sense. That might be out of all the stupid shit that AKHi TV has said, that might be the stupidest thing overall that I've heard him say. Once again, anyone who knows anything about boxing, even if you're not necessarily a boxing genius or someone overall that watches boxing quite often, a boxing aficionado, if you will, you can clearly tell the differences in performances between the Frank Sanchez and Ajagba fight. Ajagba could not even land a single punch against Frank Sanchez, while Frank Sanchez completely outboxed him. Shaw, yes, he would land his, share of punches here and there, but they were very limited. He did not throw anywhere near enough to win the fight. Not only did Frank Sanchez overall outland Ajagba, he also threw a decent amount more in that fight. He really was able to expose overall some of the weaknesses in Ajagba's game. So it just is what it is. Anyway.
Better job than Frank Sanchez, who also did a wonderful job taking Ajagba to the Cuban school. But tonight, Ajagba got taken to the American school, even more so. Shaw showed so much skill. You could argue that...
No, he didn't. And listen, Shaw, in my opinion, was actually the fresher fighter. He actually had more skill overall than what Ajagba did, but he lost himself the fight. And it's very unfortunate. You see that sometimes in boxing matches or in tennis matches or just really matches in general, where you think that you see a team or you think all in all that you see a quarterback or, someone all in all that you believe is just otherworldly talented, but they can just never get over the hump for whatever reason. They just can't get out of their own way. And Shaw appears to be one of those fighters. It is what it is. Once again, I don't have any idea how he ever got the name Big Shot, because in the biggest fight of his career, overall, as Andre Ward overall said repeatedly, he fought very piss poor.
He has the best jab in the heavyweight division. And during the fight, Andre Ward tested.
Well, how can you have the best jab in the heavyweight division when overall you really haven't been proven against anyone overall that great? And obviously he doesn't have that great of a jab, and he has a very good jab. I thought that his jab was very prominent when he would throw it, but after a while, F.A. Ajagba, he was able to get around it. And you can't just win rounds, at least repeatedly, just by landing 2 jabs per round. There were certain rounds where, Stephen Shaw, whatever the hell his name is, where he literally would only land about 3 punches, and that pretty much was about it. No, I'm sorry, this fight was not a robbery.
Tor and Timothy Bradley were all pointing out how comfortable Shaw was in there winning the fight, and how.
Did you even watch the fight? Did this dude even watch the fight? Because I just recently watched it. Timothy Bradley, Andre Ward, both of them were actually grilling Stephen Shaw because they were saying overall, this is the phone call that you were waiting for. This is the fight that you were waiting for. You're 30 years old. Overall, this is the opportunity that you've been waiting for, and I see no urgency. What the fuck is AKHi TV talking about?
Ajagba needs to do more. But after the...
I bet this dude didn't even watch the full fight. I'm pretty sure he just watched highlights. Because what the hell are you talking about?
Decision was announced. They said that the fight could have went either way. Nobody complained about this robbery. Keep in mind, during the actual fight...
Because it wasn't a robbery, you damn dipshit. I tell you what, and I've always said this repeatedly, I got a question overall not too long ago in my comment sections. I believe when I said overall that I would have a poll open up for questions, and someone asked me overall, who's probably the worst out of all the channels that you tend to review? It's got to be AKHi TV, hands down. I don't think I've seen a guy with such low boxing IQ overall out of any of the other channels. Even some of the other channels that I tend to highly disagree with, like Dante or Boxing Ego or, some of these other guys, they at least overall have, something that I agree with here and there. AKHi TV is almost wrong in almost every single thing that I've heard him talk about. I mean, it's almost crazy.
Nobody made the case that Ajagba was winning the fight at all. I mean, Shaw, who was an ex-football player, he was in there looking better than Jared Anderson. He also undefeated.
What is this man talking about? I'm almost... Is it April Fool's? Are we in the month of January? Am I crazy? Am I losing my mind here? What the fuck is this man talking about? He was looking better than Jared Anderson in there. What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? Now, to a degree, you can maybe say that Shaw looked to have a better jab and to be, a little bit more defensively responsible. But other than, Jared Anderson has been knocking dudes out. He's been plowing guys over. Now, once again, sometimes he gets a bit reckless, but overall, he's a very decently skilled fighter. Like, what is this guy talking about?
He took on a huge step up in competition and won tonight. Regardless of what...
No, he didn't win. He ended up losing on the scorecards when it came down to it, and he ended up losing himself the fight.
Them corrupted judges said. In return, they paid him back for the risk he took with a robbery that put a major stoplight on his career. They essentially...
Well, you know what? He has no one else to blame but himself. And if that's the way that you're going to fight against F.A. Ajagba, you're never going to become heavyweight champion. And I hate to be that guy, but it just is what it is. Once again, I'm not here to pussyfoot around. I'm here to call things how I see them. He's never going to be a heavyweight champion. Not after the way that I've seen him fight there. Now, there are certain people that are able to bounce back. There's certain fighters that take losses very early on in their career. But, dude, you're 30 years old. This was a fight against a fighter that not too long ago was coming off of a loss. If not coming off of a loss, I'm not even sure if F.A. Ajagba had any fights in between this. I could be wrong. But, this is the best showing that you could have had. Really, it was pathetic.
He ruined Shaw's career because this was supposed to be his coming out party. He was supposed to enter the top 10 with this type of amazing performance. This is
amazing performance. Once again, I need to know if AKHi TV actually watched the fight. I need to know if he actually watched the fight, because I just watched the full fight, about 10 minutes ago. Overall, and I mean, I'm not seeing any of the things that AKHi TV is seeing.
The sad and dark side about boxing. When an athlete like Shaw put their blood, sweat, and tears into the sport only to get robbed with a pen and a paper. To make matters worse, the darker side of this equation is when you have an ex-fighter like Timothy Bradley, who's famously known all around the world as Uncle Bradley. All Uncle Bradley had to say after the fight is how boring the fight was and that he nearly went to sleep.
Now he says Uncle Bradley overall. Now, in that term, overall, he basically meant Uncle Bradley by basically almost saying that, he's very relatable and overall that, he seems to be a good guy. But let's not forget that a lot of the times these channels, especially AKHi TV and some of these other guys, that a lot of the times when Bradley says something that they disagree with, they attack him and they called him a coon, they called him an Uncle Tom. And I'm not black overall personally, so that's not really my business when it comes down to it. I'm not really here to tell you about overall what should not happen, but I found that very highly disrespectful. And I've already said this. If you're a channel or if you're a fighter and you happen to be either a black or a black American fighter, and if you say something that they disagree with, they will attack you. They'll call you a coon. They'll call you overall an Uncle Tom. They'll call you overall a slave when it comes down to it, all because you said something that they disagree with. But anyway.
During the fight. What's so ironic is that that's the main talking point racist people used to talk about Timothy Bradley, Andre Ward, so on and so forth, when they were active, when they were still fighting, whenever.
Right, but you know what? This bullshit overall has to stop about particular demographics overall always having to stick up for each other overall. And don't get me wrong, it's great overall to support your own. That's not what I'm saying. But certain people overall, they always do this stupid bullshit towards like, oh man, why are you not defending a brother? Or, why are you not overall defending this guy? Why are you not overall for this guy? When you're logical and objective, it's not about that. And don't get me wrong, it's great overall to be for your people, for your demographic. But you don't have to lie. You don't have to be illogical overall and basically state this bullshit overall, just to be defending your demographic. Like, come on, man, that shit is so stupid. That's what these guys always do. Like, what AKHi TV is, what they're trying to do, in order to make the point is that why are you trying to, tear down overall, Stephen Shaw, another black fighter that more than likely is going to get criticized when you guys had to deal with the same thing. Well, at the end of the day, everything that they said was the truth. Yes, the fight overall was not the most entertaining fight because neither fighter overall was really, willing to risk it to get the biscuit. But at the end of the day, it was F.A. Ajagba who overall was able to do it a little bit more.
They described Andre Ward and Timothy Bradley. They described them as boring fighters that will put you to sleep. I never thought I'd see the day where Uncle Bradley will claim a fight is putting him to sleep or a fighter is boring. But this is what makes Uncle Bradley the OG Uncle Tom. Do you guys notice Uncle?
You see that? In AKHi TV, someone who's not even a black man, he feels comfortable overall calling another black. He feels comfortable calling a black fighter an Uncle Tom because he goes on this fake overall, black shit when it comes down to it overall because he thinks he's overall black with his personality. He's a wannabe black when it comes down. And like I said, AKHi TV is like that one wigger white boy that you knew in high school that thought it was okay to say the N-word and overall always, truly wanted to be black. That's what AKHi TV is. All because overall these stupid, idiots like Dante's Boxing Nation and Eagle, all these other guys, they allow overall someone like an AKHi TV, overall to say this stupid shit. Once again, but they don't find that highly disrespectful overall for AKHi TV to say something about that of a fighter when he pretty much just said the truth. It is what it is.
Bradley only goes to sleep exclusively when he's watching black American fighters.
You see that? And pretty much overall what I said was 100% correct. Basically the way that AKHi TV and Dante's Boxing Nation is saying it is that Listen, we don't want to tear down any black American fighters. Why are we tearing down each other? We should be tearing down the other fighters like Naoya Inoue or Vasily Lomachenko, Canelo Alvarez. And listen, once again, it's great to stand up overall for your people. That's a great thing, but you don't do it to the point to where, it's illogical. You don't do it to the point overall to where you have to flat out lie and overall detract. Like, come on, man.
He never goes to sleep watching fighters that are not black, even if the fight is boring. Notice when it's a black fighter like Shakur.
Well, one can make the case, all in all, that Timothy Bradley, that he's a little bit of a company man, if you maybe want to say that. But everything that Timothy Bradley and Andre Ward said as of yesterday, it was 100% the truth. Like, come on.
And Shaw. Timothy Bradley is so quick to say he's fallen asleep. But when it's a non-black fighter, when it's a hopeless fighter like Tyson Fury, when he fought Klitschko and put the world to sleep in a boring fight, Uncle Bradley had nothing to say. When Lomachenko lost to Teofimo Lopez in a stinking fashion, where Lomachenko was so-called running and not throwing punches, Timothy Bradley.
Well, I would agree with that overall, AKHi TV, and I understand your point. If you want to maybe say that Timothy Bradley, that there's been certain times where he has not broke down things quite as well, that's fully understandable. But once again, everything that Timothy Bradley and Andre Ward said yesterday, it was 100% the truth. And I thought, all in all, listen, I don't agree with everything that they say either, especially Timothy Bradley, but he was 100% on the money.
Bradley never called him boring, or Edgar Berlanga. When he puts on a boring fight like his last fight that he nearly lost against Angulo, Timothy Bradley sat over there on ESPN defending Berlanga. He said it's all about winning, even though a lot of people felt like Berlanga lost. Timothy Bradley.
I don't think that Edgar Berlanga lost, at least in his last fight, if I remember, against that one black fighter. I think the Canadian guy, I can't remember overall his name. Dude who also fought Gennady. Oh, Steve Rose, there we go. From what I remember, I don't think Edgar Berlanga lost the fight, but he certainly was close. Edgar Berlanga, in my opinion, he's not really going to make it that far. I just think that he's way too limited, way too hittable.
Sat up there defending Berlanga boring performance. If you may wonder why, it's because Berlanga and Tyson Fury have the complexion for the connection to get the ultimate protection. And one thing an Uncle Tom understands is 1, how to stay on code. 2, play along and go along with the agenda. With the facts being laid out, drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe below and click on the notification bell to be continued on the next episode of AKHi TV. Peace. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
There he goes again, spewing his Arabic bullshit when it comes down to it, knowing damn well that he wants to be speaking Ebonics. Anyway, overall, that's pretty much about it for the video today. I just thought overall that I would talk about that. I thought that was very particularly interesting. But Timothy Bradley and Andre Ward, in my opinion, they did not say anything last night that was not true. Now, if you want to say overall that they're company men to a degree and that they're not saying anything negative about certain Caucasoid or certain, Latino fighters, because, of course, Top Ring overall has that certain type of promotion, you can say that, but you can't really criticize Timothy Bradley and Andre Ward for what they said yesterday, because everything they said yesterday was 100% correct. It just is what it is. But anyways, I thought that I would talk about that. Once again, a lot of people really don't know what a true robbery is. A true robbery, if you want to see true robberies, go take a look at Sonny Laura versus Paul Williams. Go take a look at Manny Pacquiao overall versus, that was his name, Timothy Bradley, actually, ironically enough. Go take a look at those fights. But there's certain fights that are very, very close that a lot of people, of course, they consider them robberies when really they're not robberies. Manny Pacquiao versus Marquez, those are not robberies. Just is what it is. Those are very close fights that could have potentially went either way. In my view, Manny Pacquiao won the majority of them. He certainly won fight 2 and round 3, in my opinion. Fight 3 as well. Now, if you're talking about Pacquiao versus Jeff Horn, there was a lot of people that personally thought that was a robbery. I don't even personally believe that was a robbery. I thought that it was close enough. There's certain fights like Sonny Laura versus Canelo Alvarez. Gennady Golovkin versus Danny Jacobs, Sergey Kovalev versus Andre Ward, where a lot of people want to claim that it's a robbery just because they're cheering for a certain demographic or cheering for a certain fighter. That's why it's important to be objective and logical, and you can very clearly see which ones aren't and which ones are. So it is what it is. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today overall. But thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.